Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, UFC Fight Night 264 had 5 finishes on the main card. Great job, fighters. We have an update on that gambling mess from a week ago. We'll discuss that. UFC 322 is also this Saturday. A ton of great fighters are competing. This should be a good one. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. It's a repeat from last week. Goes in Las Vegas, my co-host on the MMA Junkie radio show, Danny Segura, down in Miami, one of the top reporters in the game. He'll be doing play-by-play on Saturday. Dan Tom in Las Vegas, our fight analyst here at MMA Junkie. He will be doing breakdowns later in the week for UFC 322. You got to check those out. Before I tell you to subscribe to the channel, which will be at the end, hit the like button right now, and let's get started. Guys, it's fight week. Can't wait. On paper, it's a nice one. I better be hearing some good scores when it's time. But before we dive into UFC 322, let's put a little bow on Saturday's fight night. Honestly, that main card, man, those guys need their flowers. They all got the finishes. It was a ton of fun. And the fans got their payoffs, right? Like the UFC kind of asks, hey, everyone, every Saturday, give us 6 hours. And so we go in there. We don't want controversies and mishaps and allegations. We want definitive wins. We got them. The Bone Fiends went 1 for 2 goes. But let's focus on the main event. Let's talk about Gabriel Bone Fiend's statement win in the main event over Randy Brown.
Look, I thought it was a good tactical fight. The leg kicks were absolutely insane, the way he was landing those. And I thought it had the potential to be a really good fight had it played out longer. But, I mean, Bonfim was game. You know, that was a very good strategy, I think, that he had. I think he implemented it very well. A lot of pressure coming from him, you know, and I think that's what kind of moved things into his favor. The stoppage, though, a lot of people, it was controversial. A lot of people talked about that. I don't want to take away from Bonfim's victory because really the timing on that knee and everything, he deserves his flowers. But the stoppage itself, I could kind of see it from both sides. I think it's one of those that was right on the line. It was a massive shot. We saw his reaction. He came down and he did cover up. I'll give him that much. And if it were me, maybe I let it go a little bit longer, just 1 or 2 strikes, just to see how that plays out, that situation. He's going to point to the fact, Brown, that he got up really quick and started arguing, but don't get it twisted. He didn't spring up. He kind of had to climb up with the cage. You could tell he was rocked. Now, can you still survive rocked? Yeah, you can. But very difficult position that Mark Smith put in again. But the fight itself, I thought, was entertaining. You know, I think it could have even been even better had it gone longer, because I think there was plenty of room for Randy Brown to make his adjustments. But he got the job done, and I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, leg kicks, man. I like the way you started because there was a lot of them. Danny Segura, give us your reaction to that main event from these two guys who, you know what, man, I was happy for them. We need to see new names as old names start to retire. Who were the new ones, right? Bonfim, man, I think he's like 18-1 now overall, and that's a nice stoppage win for him.
Yeah, on paper, everything's looking good. Like you look at his record, and as you mentioned, 18-1, solid. He's beaten good names now, was able to headline a UFC card and deliver a finish. So everything on paper still looks good, but I'm a little still skeptical about Bonfim. I think he's a good fighter, obviously. You cannot do the things that he's doing and not be a good fighter. But when we talk about sort of the top of the division, the Ian Gary's, Shafkat's, like all those names, I still see him a long way from those names, and I'm not really sure if he will get there. I guess that's yet to be seen. But solid performance. Not to sound like a hater here, but I'm still sort of not sold with Bonfim, even though he gave us a knockout win. And as far as a stoppage, I'll defend him on this end. I thought it was a fine stoppage. Look, Randy Brown literally dropped straight back. And the way he like put up his hands, it just kind of felt like he was covering and he was going to just go on to have a ground and pound TKO defeat. I really don't think we saw a guy like scrambling back to his feet. In fact, when the fight was stopped, he didn't like immediately jump to his feet or anything like that. So I actually thought the stoppage was completely fine. But yeah, and as far as like what's next in terms of a name, is you asked. Oof, that's an interesting one. Again, I don't feel like he's ready for the top of the division yet, but certainly Randy Brown is a solid name. So I don't know, maybe get him like a Jeff Neal next, or someone in the bottom top 15 of the welterweight division.
All right, Dan, Tom, reaction from you, please.
Yeah, I think it was a really good performance, especially because he was able to game plan. You know, maybe Brown could be at that point where he's getting kind of figured out. I will say, kind of crazy for a tall guy like Brown to be finished twice by knees, but those were both former teammates, Vicente Luque and Gabriel Bonfim at Serrato MMA, which is now Bonfim Brothers MMA. So yeah, I want to see more from him, especially, you know, in tough fights where he can get extended, you know, another kind of Nicholas Dalby archetype to see if he can remedy that right past that test. But I think it's a really good look for him. So yeah, he should be happy. And, you know, like I said, I come down on, you know, the refs or whatever, but unlike most folks in the space, like fans, I'm not just broad brushing it. I can actually point to their tendencies and whatnot. And if you wanted a later stoppage, you probably would have gotten that maybe with a Dean or a Peterson, and that's no shade to them. But I feel like this was a spot on stoppage by Smith for as much as I can, you know, poke fun at fun or criticism at him. I also credit him with some of the best stoppages in the game. Go back and look at Jimmy Crute's stoppage win on the Contender Series. It's probably one of the best stoppages I've ever seen in this sport. It was a standing stoppage, but the guy was kind of out on his feet, and you really had to be seeing his eyes there. So those pilot eyes really work well for Mark Smith in those situations, and I'll defend him here. I thought the stoppage was fine.
Damn, Crute was like 7 years ago, wasn't it? That's a good pull.
Yeah, no, go back and watch that though. I can't remember the gentleman's name who he gets it over, but it's a really good stoppage where everybody's like, what? And then you watch both the result and the replay, and you're like, oh wow, he had his eagle eyes to have spotted that.
Dan's always had that photographic memory.
Both.
It's solid. All right, guys. Yeah, no, congrats to Bonfim. The other Bonfim brother did not too good, so this was a nice way for that camp to at least end the night. You know, going 1 for 2. Dan, what's his ceiling? You know, Danny talked about, I still need to see more, because again, 18-1's one hell of a start. I mean, this is just, his record is one off of Shavkat, who's literally, we're all waiting for his return and could be fighting for a title. But it does appear that Bonfim still needs more seasoning, maybe, or another fight to convince us. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think his style poses a lot of problems for people, but we'll talk about this fight. You know, you want to talk about a ceiling. I think the ceiling stylistically, rankings, is kind of represented in a matchup, you know, we'll be talking about shortly here with Brady and Edwards going on this week. I think those are really tough matchups for someone like a Bonfim. I don't think he's quite at that level, but he's climbing right there.
Mm-hmm. Goes, how about you? Can this guy be a champ one day, or title? Let's just say title contender, maybe. We won't put all kinds of pressure on him just yet.
Mm-hmm. Contender for sure. I think he's got very good attributes, and I think he's only getting better. So yeah, I think he can get there. As far as maybe winning a belt, you're going to need a little bit more out of him, I think, to be able to claim that. But he's got a good trajectory.
Danny, what would you like to see next for Randy Brown? Longtime veteran, probably a good top 10 to 15 guy, having trouble breaking into the top 10. Also, credit to him and what he's doing for the island of Jamaica. That's been through a lot the last few weeks because of the hurricane. But yeah, no, zeroing in just on his career, what would you like to see next for him?
Yeah, I would actually put that number more like 15 or 20. I don't think he's top 10 quality. And I think that's kind of the ceiling that we're seeing. Obviously, you know, we see some guys have like late resurgences in their career, but I kind of think this is more or less what we're getting from Randy Brown, which is still like a very solid guy that can put on fun fights, give us some solid finishes. So I do think he has a nice place in the welterweight division. As far as what's next, I don't know. Maybe would Kevin Holland would be something interesting. I don't know. A name of that caliber outside of the top 15, like anywhere between 15 and 20, I think would be good.
All right. Guys, how about another highlight from this card? And don't be shy, because there was a lot of finishes. And at the same time, you know how the bonuses seem to go to a lot of the top fighters, and we're like, sure would be nice if some of the younger cats got some of that so they could reinvest in their careers. Same thing here. You know, again, the finishes were there. If you have 2 of them, please bring it. We got the time. But let's go around the horn once with your highlight. And then again, if you get a second thought, please raise your hand or just give me the word. I got a couple, man. You go first.
Uros Medic, I thought, was a great
Nice
performance in the cage, and you know what he was able to do when he got the microphone. You really have to maximize that time, and I think he kind of imprinted something in a lot of people's brains. You know, like you have to go back and you go, man, this dude has been kind of destructive. When he'll lose a fight here and there, but he's definitely a guy you tune in for, and I hope they do start to recognize him a little bit more.
Yeah, didn't get a bonus, but man, his fights are pretty interesting because, like you said, he's either smashing someone or he's on the receiving end, but you definitely don't want to blink. And old school MMA, a lot of guys used to get that type of love, and the new people are they're not catching traction. All right, Dan, Tom, how about you? Another highlight, please.
Man, every time Uros Medic speaks, he reminds me of that old SNL skit with Steve Martin and Dan Aykroyd, and a couple of wild and crazy guys. Hey, you like it fun? It's awesome, by the way. But I'm going to shout out Chris Padilla. George kind of mentioned it. You know, we've sang that song so many times, right? It's like preaching to the choir. But yeah, it's such an easy fix for all the criticisms that the bonuses should be more. They've stayed the same. Everybody should get them. All finishes should get them. Yet they have what tools they do have. They still find a way to misuse the UFC, which is really unfortunate because it's no skin off their back. And when you think about it, like reinvesting into careers, like George put it, it's that, you know, it should check the boxes, at least on a selfish perspective, but yet they drop the ball. And even with a betting scandal and people pointing to their low fighter pay, which, you know, wouldn't be a fix-all, but is absolutely a just part of the narrative, what do? They throw fire on it. They could do good PR. They could help their own organization from a selfish perspective, like we just said, from reinvesting in talent. And, you know, gosh forbid, do something nice from a moral standpoint. Check 3 major boxes with one motion by giving Chris Padilla a bonus. Did not do it, man. And as somebody who, there's just a lot of, you know, whether it's people in the news or people in our own families, most of us can't throw a rock without hitting like a selfish person. And then there's dudes out there like Padilla, which is, and I say this seriously because as somebody who's like, I care about my mom, and that's the only thing I want to make sure she's okay. And like, I've thought about, you know, freaking selling my house just to make sure she has a nut to sit on. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know that's hitting people's eyes. Like, what media? You mean you guys don't all live in your mom's basements? You actually help your family members? Yeah, that's what some people actually like to do. And so when I see like a guy like Chris Padilla trying to do that, as you guys know, you guys are to you know, and I'm sure you as well, Danny, but like, you know, you guys have done stuff for your parents and just gone above and beyond. Great. Hand to the Garcia brothers here. So you want to see those stories rewarded. You love those stories. I love seeing it in you guys. I love seeing it in the fighters. And it just felt like such an easy home run. I'm going to shut up now. It was just so stupid of the UFC and short-sighted and heartless not to give Padilla the bonus. And he deserved it, by the way. Underdog, win.
5 pounds his opponent came heavy too.
Missing.
Exactly.
Like,
dude, that's crazy.
What are we doing?
How many times, I've said this many times on this show, on MMA Junkie Radio, how many times do you hear, don't let it get to the judges from all these guys at the UFC? When you don't get that bonus, I feel like the first thing you need to do is walk over to that group of Hunter Campbell, Dana White, the matchmakers, and just tap them on the shoulder and go, I did what you asked me to do. What did I do wrong? See what that answer is. See what they tell you. What did you do wrong? Because you got the finish. You put on a great performance. So why aren't you being rewarded? That's what they're constantly telling people. You need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. So what did I do wrong? And see what they tell you. I have a feeling they're going to be so backed into a corner. They're going to say, Jesus, he really didn't do anything wrong. All right, I got you, kid. Do that, man.
I agree. Danny, how about you? Another highlight, please.
Daniel Marcos, he picked up his second submission win in his career. I did not see this coming. I did think he was going to win, but thought it was maybe going to be a decision. Maybe he'll pick up a knockout, but he goes out there and puts Miles Johnson to sleep, and it was a nice bounce back win. And I'm pretty high on him. I'm not saying future champion or anything, but I do think that Daniel Marcos is one of the more technical guys at 135 pounds, and you give him the right matchups, and I think he can put on some fun fights and climb into the rankings. So, shouts out to him for his bounce back win.
He said that first loss, because I think he made it to 16-0 or 17-0. And it hit him so hard that it took him a month just to shake it off and say, okay, I got obviously continue fighting, continue living, but that's how dark of a place he went to, because people fell off the bandwagon apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, Miles John's always been a tough out, and he ran through him pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
So congrats to Daniel Marcos, big win. And yeah, man, Christopher D, I hope you get an envelope of some sort. You made me remember you. I think he went a bit far when he says he's going to be the greatest of all time. Slow down, slow down. Maybe the greatest of all time from Southern California, or lightweight. Isolate on something, because you did come over with 6 losses to the UFC. So, you got to like shake those off still. But yeah, man, I really wanted him to get one. I wish it had been one of those fight nights. This was the time for Dana White to say, you remember that Q&A I had with Nina Drama a few days ago, and I told everyone, stop, let the fights happen first, then come at me. That would have been a first chance to say, great job, fighters, you had my back. All finishers get a bonus like you did on that London fight night a few years ago. It didn't happen. All right, for me, I thought Emmers, his discipline, because Hyder Emil is like fighting a hurricane, and Hyder Emil draws you into those types of fights. And for Jamal Emmers to strike, use his length, wrestle, he just stayed really, really composed. He got himself a nice win. I'm going to throw another one out there because I was really impressed by this card. Zachary Reese. This guy, dude, I thought I was at Lion Fight with Goes and Dan Tom 10 years ago, 12 years ago. These guys are up against the fans, just elbows, smashing forearms, cutting each other up, knees. Reese took one in the body from McVeigh, and I go, oh man, that's curtains for him, because he's the guy that took it on late notice, and instead he toughed it out. Then he resorted to wrestling, and then in between rounds, it looked like he came down right from being in that moment where it's all just happening so fast, it's chaos, and he realized that wrestling's the key. I won't get carved up. And he has no answer for it, and then he went back to it, got himself the finish. Great on him. It was a really fun first fight of the night. And again, I hate to harp on it because it wasn't a big deal. Dana gets his balls busted all the time, but Dana looked really upset by what they said. And it's true on paper, Dana. It's true. You didn't give us a sexy card, but the fighters made you look good, and that's why you should reward them. And it all started with that first fight. You guys got another one, or should I move on? Because I'm telling you,
that's great call. That's a great reference and tie in there, actually. Yeah.
Yo, and shouts out to old man Barcelos, who's on
a
win streak. I thought he was gonna lose against Ricky Simone. I picked Ricky to win on my staff picks. I was surprised by it.
I picked Barcelos, so I'm surprised that Ricky didn't have a career performance. That's usually what happens. I picked Emil, and then I picked the Johns as well, which, by the way, great shout on Marcos, Danny. That guy took the fight on 1 week notice to tie on what George was saying about Reese. Reese was like a day notice, and it was the short notice guys who outlasted the full camp guys. That's crazy.
Yeah. Joseph Morales outside the UFC for 7 years. He's 2-0 in 2025. I like that he wants to bring back the UFC to Sacramento, but don't start with your own name and then Andre Felix. Start with Fluffy. He's the star of Sacramento right now. Faber's long gone. Emmett's declined a little bit, but you got Fluffy, you got Song Yadong. Start off with some of those guys and then sprinkle yourself in. But Fluffy would be the mean potatoes. He would be an excellent draw in Sacramento. I went to the UFC in Sacramento once, and I had a blast. Their fans are nuts up there, man. I really, really enjoyed it. Like I said, this card had a little bit all over the place. We can go on and on about it. Cavalcanti looked good over Mayra Bueno Silva, former title challenger. She made her look like she didn't belong. And I think Cavalcanti could still get better, man, if she uses – I think she needs a little bit more snap, but she's got a good frame. We'll see what can happen with that. Hokit trying to beat Chael Sonnen. I appreciate the effort. I think he went a little bit too far, but still, he made me remember him, and now here I am talking about him. So good for you. Like I said, this card had a little bit of everything. So coming out of it, I was pleasantly pleased. Let's get to some of the latest news, guys. Unfortunately, the fight fixing allegations from last week's card, they have not died down. We have some updates from the major players. Danny, so the UFC's chimed in on this. I'm going to kind of read a little bit of what they said, and then we'll go to your reaction first here. So remember, Isaac Dolgarian came through Dana White looking for a fight. This was like in 2022. Took him a while, got to the UFC, went 2-2. The loss against Yadier Del Valle is what made him 2-2. That was the last Saturday, not the one that just passed, the one before. On Sunday, by then, we found out he was released. Shout out to the Uncrowned gang for that. Ariel Helwani, I guess, came with that one. Then the UFC put this out, guys, on Monday. Quote, this is from the UFC. Like many professional sports organizations, the UFC works with an independent betting integrity service to monitor wagering activity on our events. Our betting integrity partner, IC360, monitors wagering on every UFC event and is conducting a thorough review of the facts surrounding the Dolgarian versus Del Valle bout on Saturday, November 1st. We take these allegations very seriously, and along with the health and safety of our fighters, nothing is more important than the integrity of our sport. Now, after that, Dana White also did an interview with TMZ. I'll read you a little bit of this. I think it's important, so let me just get through this. Quote, probably about 1 o'clock that day, the day of the fight, we're with a company called IC360, and they are the best monitoring company in the business. They reached out to us and they told us that there was unusual action going on with that fight. Did we know anything? Dana White says we didn't. He continues to TMZ. So what we did is we called the fighter and his lawyer and said, hey, what's going on? There's some weird action going on in your bet, probably means in your fight. Some weird betting action going on with your fight. Are you injured? Do you owe anybody money? Has anyone approached you? And the kid, Bulgarian, said, no, absolutely not. I'm going to kill this guy. So he continues to TMZ. So we said, okay, the fight plays out. First round finish by rear naked choke. Literally, the first thing we did was call the FBI. We called the FBI. I've met with the FBI twice today. That's the whole thing. He continues. People are out there talking. Oh, hundreds of fights under investigation. It's total bullshit. Usual clickbait bullshit. IC360, our company, they monitor all of the betting. Like I said, they are the best in the business. There aren't hundreds of fights being investigated. All clickbait BS. Your usage of clickbait is BS, Dana, but the rest was important. All right, Danny, react, please. On the latest.
Yeah. So this is clearly, if proven that, that fight, there was some funny business in that fight and it was fixed. And if proven, if there's other fights in the past that have been fixed, that is probably like the worst case scenario for the UFC, and something that I've seen with the statement with Dana White during the interview. And I kind of highlighted it even before all that happened. On the last episode is how important they deem this topic, right? Like, how many times have we seen a fighter with a controversial past competing, or something that they said a controversial, or PEDs, right? Like the whole John Jones thing. Like the UFC really just brushes off controversy, and they don't really give in too much into public pressure and cancel culture and this and that. But when it comes to this, they are like taking this very, very seriously. And you could literally see, like, I'm not saying the sport would fall apart, but if something really extensive would come out that would say or suggest that fights had been fixed in the UFC, like multiple fights, and this had been going on for a while, I'm not saying, like, again, MMA would go away, but like, man, from all the progress we've made, that's like taking a step back of like 10 years, I would say. I mean, it would really, really be a black eye. So we'll see what happens. It's very interesting. But something that I've seen, and again, Dana always is very, you always got to look into like the little things that he drops in his comments. He's very intentional with the things that he says. When he says, oh, absolutely bullshit, that hundreds of fights are fixed, this and that, I'm not saying that's the case, but I've seen already a certain part of the fan base start to develop a little bit of, and this could be paranoia, but start to develop a little bit of mistrust with the UFC. I've seen some people be like, I'm not touching at all the fights this weekend in terms of betting. You'd be crazy to bet with everything that's going on. I've seen people go back and be watching fights and all of a sudden start questioning certain referees, certain fighters, certain camps, certain managers as well. If there's a tendency of like certain fights being kind of weird and they all come through a same management company. So yeah, it's an interesting thing that's going on, and obviously I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it in future episodes because it's playing right before our eyes.
All right, Dan, let's get some thoughts from you before you start. Let me add a little bit of what else Dana White said. Quote, I've been very vocal, very open about this. We will be your worst enemy. We will immediately go after you, guns blazing, with the FBI and whoever else we need to get, and we will do everything we can to make sure you go to prison. Your thoughts on everything that's transpired so far?
Yeah, I think that ties into comments that I saw in the chat, and I saw a lot of people make going, "Oh, Dana has Dana hates it when you beg for bonuses off the president, off the the UFC president does that, and the UFC wants it both ways. They want to use these air quote poverty porn stories where they can tell these fighters stories on the broadcast, right? They're sob stories, right? But God forbid they acknowledge their own stories in hopes of helping someone else, right? Because they want it both ways. And it's the same thing for the betting thing. People are like, why did the UFC let it happen if they had the warnings and all this stuff, right? Kind of confirming the news that Gigi just passed on there. And again, like I always say, guys, on the show, you guys heard it, 90% of the complaints and questions in this space can be answered by the UFC schedule. And the UFC wants it both ways. They want to be able to hit their contractual obligations, but they also want to complain if you do them wrong, even though, again, it's not they're not to blame. And I actually don't think they're involved in the fight fixing as far as tinfoil hat. They have way too much to lose. But at the same time, they are facilitating the conditions for the growth of corruption and these things to happen with their really low fighter pay, the way they literally, almost spit on fighters, be like, oh, no, you're going to ask for it. We're going to F you just because you asked for it. It's like, what the heck? What did I do? And wait, because my sob story that you guys use to promote on the broadcast, but I can't use to make a case for a bonus I deserve. They want it both ways. So so they knew, they let the fight happen, but at the same time, he's going to turn around and say federal effing prison if you do anything. So you're going to go through, facilitate the conditions, and okay, maybe we can't blame you for that, UFC 100%. But when, sure enough, the devil comes knocking at the door and the FBI, or in this case, IC 360, their third-party service, tells them, yo, flags, and you still go through with it, well, yeah, you want to have your cake and eat it too. And that's traditionally been Dana White. That's traditionally been the UFC. And that's what we're seeing here. And it sucks because you already, somebody does breakdown shows. You already have people that are already in the tinfoil hat cap or going like, listen, Elise Ardeline has this many OnlyFans. The UFC is clearly setting her up for a win here. And you got to listen to that nonsense all the time. It's only worse now, right? And as much as I beg on the referees, right? Like, the referees, guys, it's not like the NBA. Hey, I'm talking to some Lakers fans here. You guys know about some ref fixes. Like you can control all love, guys, but NBA in general, right? Let's be honest. You can control the tempo of a match with a whistle. It's not the same. It's a tempo-based sport, but you allow one score in MMA and the fight's over. The only thing a ref could maybe be investigated on, I think, is the overs, and that could be. And I'm not saying refs haven't been culpable, but you're right. Everybody's getting. Danny's right. Everybody's getting increasingly tinfoil hat now. And it's easy to predict it seeing this way. It's just sad that it is this way,
Mm-hmm.
I will say something to kind of push back on your comments, Dan. And again, I don't like fully agree with these, but I do think it's worth mentioning two things because I do agree. Like I think your takes are sensible, and I feel like a lot of other people have mentioned it, and I just kind of want to highlight, play devil's advocate over here. One, in regard to the fighter pay, like certainly you would think, and I think it's completely rational to think that, because these fighters are not well compensated, maybe they can they're easier prey to, or they're more prone to fall to, you know, people that are trying to fix fights and they're trying to make an extra buck, this and that. But we've seen in soccer, and I know you guys follow the Premier League, Georgian Ghost, Tonali from Newcastle. He was banned from Premier League for several matches for a betting controversy. Obviously, it wasn't fixing, but you know, he was playing in a certain way in order to hit certain props and stuff. And this is a guy that like makes, you know, hundreds of thousands of euros a month. Like, you know, these guys are mega rich. We also saw it with Paquetá, who plays also for West Ham United. He also got into some stuff. And I believe, and I'm not too familiar with the NBA, but there was a coach, right? I believe for the
they have a bad one going right now.
Yeah, for the Portland Trailblazers, his
The
name
Trailblazers,
is
yeah.
Chauncey Billups.
Yeah, and from what I hear, that guy has a ton of money as well. Like that guy signed multi-million-dollar contracts. So, yeah. So again, I think fighter pay is a discussion here, but I don't think it's the answer.
But I think you're both right. Honestly, you both present good examples. I think on the higher level, Danny, like what you're explaining, it's a sickness, and I think on the lower level, it's just urgency. You know, like backs to the wall. You feel like, well, no one's gonna know, and because a lot of fighters do come from a edgy type of background, not all, but a lot. You know, sometimes it's just like the old days. Remember when we used to clown around and do this, fill in the blank, you know,
and athletes too. I want to say athletes as well. Even the $1 million ones, they still end up with the not so $1 million ones as far as attaching themselves to, you know, Andrew Tates and sex traffickers and other sketchy characters. No, absolutely fair point to bring, Danny. And I don't disagree, by the way. The reason why I only threw the quick caveat saying that it won't fix it all is because of that comment, which is fair. But I feel like shout out to James Lynch and Johnny the Greek Gambler had a good interview. And Johnny was saying, like what George was saying there, it's a sickness on these levels. A lot of it is they have their own gambling addictions, and it's a gambling addiction enough because they're playing with bigger money. They also owe bigger, and you got to get yourself out of a bigger hole. So it's just as it's unfair to be like, oh, fighter pay, it's 100% that, which I never said, by the way. And I know you're not saying that I said that. But it's just as unfair to be like, oh, well, $1 million do it, so it'll never be fixed. Like, no, it's something that it's a persistent problem because gambling is a problem when we're all human beings. So, yeah, of course, it will exist, you know, higher up, and there are explanations for that. But I think what is undeniable is the barrier to entry, right? And we don't even have to talk about money to the barrier to entry. We talk about this all the time. We can just walk into a gym and see the Michael Jordans and Scottie Pippens of the world. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that. You can't go and I want to watch you know, Ronaldo play. I want to watch you know, I just, you know, follow Sergio Ramos from the club at 3 a.m. I want to see how he does at practice this morning. Let me follow him in. You know, like you can't do that. So I think the barrier of entry is undeniably lower, which is why, you know, we should be being more careful, or they should be being more careful. The people, you know, who look out for these things.
Yeah. And the second, and again, I'm just trying to have an open conversation. And then the second thing I would bring up that I also think it's fair here, and I'm kind of blanking on what that was right now. It was the pay and then I've seen also a lot of people criticize the UFC for not pulling the fight, and I think that's completely fair, and I may even agree, to be honest. But I do just want to mention that like it could also be like a weird thing or like a weird door and territory to entry when the UFC, like given the power to the UFC where they can just pull fights because there's a suspicion, right? Like that'd be kind of weird. And IC 360 is not like a public thing. It's something they work with. We don't get like, obviously some people picked up on the betting lines moving, but we also don't get the IC 360 report. So I don't know. It opens up for like a weird can of worms where in the future the UFC is like, well, we pulled this fight because we think there's something suspect going on, and you know, we don't have anything public to hang on to, and we're kind of just at their mercy, and that kind of power to like just randomly pull fights whenever they want because of a perceived something. It's a little, I don't know. It's like a weird territory, right? Like I don't know if necessarily the UFC really mishandled that by not pulling the fight.
I don't think it would happen often, and frankly, I'm all for it. Like if it happened like they said this last time, okay, now if Dana were to reveal, oh, they're pulling us back there all the time, okay, then you're right, we have a bigger problem. But in this instance, I would have had no problem with it because of obviously how sensitive it is. Guys, we'll give you the final word only because we have to move on, but I do want to say something just to add a few things because this was a whole week of shit that happened after the fight, and I gave you the UFC's reaction, Dana White's reaction. Mark Montoya also spoke with Ariel Helwani, and he was adamant he didn't know about it. He knew about the allegations prior to the fight, talked to the fighter, was assured that wasn't the case. They fought. Since then, the fighter is no longer with Factory X. Then there was a report from a Harry Mack who said that Factory X, I guess, got a visit from the FBI. Factory X went public on their X account and said that's not the case. And again, I'm saying this only because I appreciated Coach Montoya speaking about it and being so direct about how he wants nothing to do with this, and that's, you know, he's not appreciating what's going down. One other thing here, other fighters, Vanessa Demopoulos, Vincent Morales, there might have been a third or fourth, have said they've been approached. And I think that's where Dana White had to shut that down and say, clickbait, bro, it's not clickbait. Your fighters are saying that they've been a part of it. That quote's then being put up, whether it's a YouTube influencer or it's just some rando, an egg, like you used to say in the old days on Twitter, saying it. It's been said by someone. It's not clickbait. Goes your thoughts on all this, please.
I don't think there should be no price tag on your integrity as a person, as a company. That should be one of the most important things that you ever have to deal with in life. And the UFC, a company that has that much money, you have to protect that integrity at all costs. And if it means pulling a fight, which if people aren't familiar with gambling, maybe this doesn't make a lot of sense, but the shift in that line was so irregular. Just imagine another sport where a starting quarterback or a starting pitcher all of a sudden is pulled or something. That's the kind of switch that we saw, something very big. And I think it's worth pulling the fight. But remember, you have the advantage of saying, look, guys, we're not saying you can't fight. You just can't fight today. We'll put you on next week's card or the week after or something. And this is where integrity comes to play, and you have the money to do it. Compensate them for that switch. We're sorry that you have to do this, but at the end of the day, we need to get to the bottom of this, and it might take some time to figure that out.
Yes.
And maybe we get it wrong and there wasn't anything, but our integrity means so much that we need to protect that, and we're going to compensate you for that if that doesn't happen. There are cards just about every week, like Dan said. You can make this right. But if you're caught doing something bad like this, like Danny said, this can potentially ruin your sport. I think it's worth pulling a fight over that.
And Dana's been clear to say, we don't know yet. We don't have the final answer. In the meantime, names are getting dragged through the mud, right? And Dan, I saw that same interview. Shout out to James Lynch and Gianni the Greek. They went through a lot, but I remember Gianni the Greek say, this takes time to figure it out. Sometimes it can take years to figure it out. And remember, that other guy's been cut. Well, what if at the end this wasn't true? What if just some rich people overseas, listened to an expert, right, and said, fuck it, let's put 200 grand on just this finish and then move the line? Who knows? So many things can be out there. I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I realize Bulgarian also has ties to the old Kraus gym, where problems arose 3 years ago, and that was probably the biggest incident that ever happened in our sport. I realize I'm trying to cover it all, but still, it hasn't played out just yet, and it could get messy. So all that just happened in the past week. We'll see what continues with it, but it definitely is a big deal. Anyway, a big deal is UFC 322. We got to get to it, so I'm going to skip over some of the other news. But guys, you did a great job digging into this. Kudos to you guys. Excitement level for UFC 322 on Saturday. Dan, back to you. 1 to 10. The card on paper alone. Is it jumping at you? Can you just not wait to dig into some of these matchups that you do such a great job for MMA Junkie? And you're going to obviously give those at the end of the week. But these are those types of cards, right? That probably get your tail wagging.
So I just at this point of the year, folks, there's the way the UFC schedule runs. If you cover UFC and Contender Series, that means you probably haven't had a break since summertime. So we're all at least spiritually like the scientists from Independence Day, where we're just like, they don't let us out much, man. We're losing our minds over here. I'm burnt the hell out. I'm jaded. I'm not afraid to criticize the UFC. You guys see that. That being said, man, I got like a 9 out of 10 going to this thing. This thing could finish a 10 out of 10 for me.
I love it. All right. How about you, Danny? You're usually the contrarian, the Russian judge, the 4.1s out of 10s. Come on, man. I better hear at least 8 or 9 come out of your mouth on paper.
I would give it a 9.
Ooh, okay.
I would give it a 9. This card not only has the name value, which is important, and I absolutely, I can't wait if there's ever, I get a chance to talk to Dana at a press or something, and this topic comes up. Dude, fans don't criticize an Apex. An Apex card could be like the best card of the year. It could be. Like, yeah, we're not criticizing that. The action could be fun. What we're criticizing is on paper. This card on Saturday could suck ass. Who knows? We'll find out. But on paper, are we watching relevant MMA? Are these fights meaningful? Are we watching names that we know that provide high quality MMA? The answer usually to those events is no, and that's why people hate on you. So the whole argument of like watch the card, and that's bullshit. But I'll say this card, name value wise, top, 2 championship fights, 2 fighters moving up in weight class to challenge for a belt, and then everything below the championship fights. Not only do you have name values and former champions and title contenders and this and that and top prospects, but the matchups are fun, man. I'm excited for this one.
Big, yeah, and the welterweights are on display. Yeah. All right, how about you, goes 1 out of 10 excitement level?
I am gonna say a 9 now. Okay, when they all weigh in and everything's good, that's gonna shoot up to a 10. This is an amazing card. But what I want to talk about on this card that makes it so amazing, we all point to the main event and the co-main event. I'd argue that some of those fights underneath that are even more entertaining. I cannot wait for Brady Morales. I think that's going to be an absolute banger. I think it's going to tell a lot. This card is going to tell a story that night and a story going forward. And that's what I love about this fight card.
Yeah, you're right, man. Morales has been this enigma, even though he's like 17-0 and he smashed was it Magny, I think, in the last fight. He could very well do that to Brady, or maybe Brady quiets the potential of Morales. Who knows? Leon Edwards' back is to the wall. Carlos Pracha's bounced back from his loss in his last fight. He had a nice spinning elbow, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, the welterweights are on display. JDM versus Makhachev. Who's got more to gain? Goes Makhachev trying to make history and join the champ club. JDM's just doing his thing, man. Like, hey, this is my first title defense. But he does get an all-time great as his first foe.
Yeah, I think more to game is probably going to go to Islam, just because, how often do you hear him compared to Khabib, right? And this is the one thing that maybe can separate him from him, right? Going and winning 2 titles. I think there's a lot to gain there. For JDM, of course, it would be a great win. How people are. The first thing I point to is the guy's not even really a welterweight. I think he's got more time to do more things. I think more to gain, though, is Makhachev.
Danny, you agree?
I agree, but I also feel like Makhachev, if he loses, I don't feel like it's that big of a deal. Like, again, he's still a pound for pound great. He can arguably still the best 55er, go down and get an immediate title shot. But like I feel like he's still relevant, right? Especially if he loses competitively, right? But for JDM, I feel like this is a guy that we don't really see him defending the belt. This is a guy that's not really in the pound for pound conversation. This is a guy that's not even close to being talked about, one of the greatest welterweights of all time or anything like that. Like, he just kind of feels, from what I've seen with the public, kind of like as a placeholder champ, like some Rakhmonov is eventually becoming champ. Like, he's kind of still underestimated, even though he's got the belt. If he's able to go out there and put the lights on Makhachev and like flip all that around, and all of a sudden be part of the pound for pound, be all of a sudden talked about, could this guy go on a welterweight run that surpasses this? I feel like he's got a lot to gain here as well. Like this is his first title defense being Islam Makhachev. It's a big deal, man.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Dan Tom?
As far as the matchups on the main card go, or you want me to name a different one?
No, just who has the most to gain.
Yeah, the most
from,
to gain
from
on that
this
one,
fight, and then I'm gonna give you two, Dan. Who has more to gain, and what would be the best result for the UFC?
Oof. More to gain, I'd say JDM. Best result for the UFC. I would say Makhachev. I know those guys, only fight certain times of the year, certain places, this and that. But we see other fans, man. They almost fetishize the Dagestani fighters. So that would just keep the boners up for that crowd.
All right, you did say JDM. You slipped it quietly. Has more to gain. Explain that.
Because even though people would probably push back on this, and I don't really care to die on the hill either way. The fact is that you beat a guy who's the champ, you become the champ. And I know JDM is the champ, but someone pointed in the chat, we've got 2 pound for pound number ones in the men's and female divisions competing this weekend, and Islam Makhachev is arguably that number one, right? Regardless of how the UFC or how any of us think of it, he's right at the top. I don't think anybody can argue that. So to beat anybody at the top of a pound for pound list and steal that thunder, and see if the crowd wants to keep that same energy, that's a good place to be in on Monday morning for JDM.
Yeah, I agree. All right, prediction time. Dan will write extensive work on this later in the week. If he wants to give a lean, he more than can, but he does that. Great stuff from Dan. And he'll post it on Twitter. It'll be on our site. He'll do some videos as well. Danny, how about you, man? Who do you like in this one? I know it's just Monday. We got embeddeds. We got countdowns.
No, well, that's not going to change my mind, but I'm still like just very undecided. I want to go with what everyone's thinking, what the odds makers are thinking, which is Islam Makhachev, and that's going to be my staff
favorite too. He's like minus
that's
what?
Going to be my staff picks, MMA Junkie. But I don't know. JDM is good, man. JDM is good, and we saw Islam have a bit of trouble with the boxing of Dustin Poirier in the rematch, and Dustin Poirier did a pretty good job at stuffing some of those takedowns. Obviously, he ended up still losing the fight, but I think that JDM is kind of just like a bigger, stronger version. And man, if he's able to have a similar performance to Dustin Poirier, and plus be much bigger and stronger, I think he could win. So I don't know. I'm going with Islam, but I'm not very confident on that pick, to be honest.
Okay, but whose nose would you rather have, Dustin Poirier's or JDM's?
JDM's. Dude, JDM looks badass.
It is gangster. All right, Ghost, how about you? Early lean.
Look, JDM has a lot of tools. I think he's massively underrated. If Islam can't get the fight to the ground early, I think he's going to need an incredible plan B. But Islam is so hard to pick against, man. So early Islam, but gambling-wise, I like JDM.
Me too. You took the words out of my mouth. I realize Islam is great. He really is great. But man, this is 15 pounds, not 10. Mm-hmm. And JDM's just been a dog. So I thought Poirier, like I said, he did pretty much lose every round, but he had moments, and I wonder if JDM, a bigger version, can obviously have some success, probably hits a little harder, things like that, better on the ground. So that's my early lean, is because of the gambling, man. Those are some big odds, plus 225 on the champ. Come on now. Dan, do you have an early lean, or are you still...
I'm going to say my prediction on this one, guys. The top 2 fights are really tough to pick. I'm going to let the analysis go, but you guys nailed it. Islam's the favorite, while JDM, from a betting perspective, absolutely attractive as a dog. I will just say the big question for me is, obviously, the moving up in the weight. How's that going to affect it? The wrestling, this and that. But I also say that there's unknowns for JDM too. We really haven't seen him against he's only faced one southpaw, I believe, Danny Roberts. So he's going to face a southpaw kicker, which I always thought could be kind of problematic for his style. Makhachev's gotten better striking, better composure, which is the huge keys against JDM. So it's real tricky, and there's questions on both sides.
Yeah. Reese Khan in the chat says, the belt is going back to Russia. Pulp 4132 in the chat says, nah, inshallah, the belt stays in Australia. I apologize that I haven't been more on the chat, but chat, you guys are always a part of the show, and when I see something, I'll jump on it. If you guys can hit the like button, we have about 10 minutes left. There's still a little bit more to discuss. What's this? Fresh melon juice. Gilbert had JDM on the ground, but fumbled the bag. Islam will destroy him on the ground. Okay.
That's a fair point as well, right? And what was the other fighter that took the fight on short notice at the Apex and almost beat JDM by decision?
Basil Hafez.
Yeah, so there's that as well, right? And Tom, yeah, there is questions on both sides for sure.
Shevchenko versus Zhang. Where does this fight rank among some of the women's biggest fights in their history, Danny?
Man, it's got to be top 5, I think. It's got to be top 5. I mean, this is big, and I've been calling for this for a while. Like, women's MMA needs this, like a big fight feel in women's MMA. This has to be up there right now. Like, I can think of like Nunes and Cyborg being bigger, right? For what it meant.
Carano and Cyborg, Rousey and Tate, probably 1 and 2.
Yep.
Definitely not Esparza and Rose. 2. What else has been big? I really love Kayla and Larissa, and I'm not just trying to put PFL on the map. I really was looking forward to that third fight because I could see Larissa was chipping away. But yeah, I get your point. It's pretty big. Yeah. Goes. How about you, man? The significance here of someone who's won 8, defended the title 8 times. The belt's run out of ruby space for Valentina Shevchenko if she can win the next one against the Chinese superstar who only 2 losses to Rose. Other than that, she's handled her business. She pretty much cleaned out the division below, and now she's moving up.
I think it's at the top. When you talk about the Mount Rushmore, right, of female mixed martial arts, somebody might gain a place, somebody might lose a place. I don't even feel like the whole story will be told in this particular day. I think even going forward, this is a fight that we're going to be pointing at a lot.
Dan, you get a 2 for what's the significance of this fight in women's MMA, and what's the best result for the UFC?
I think it's right up to the comes right up to the plate where Cyborg and Nunes was, but I do think it has a chance to surpass it just because like it's just a much more awesome division with much more awesome fighters. Amanda Nunes, I know I'm going to catch heat for this, wasn't too entertaining. She either like knocked people out fast or like had like, decisions that either some were dominant and stuff. She improved on that, but like that match was so crappy. And it just ended so fast. It was so stupid between Cyborg and Nunes. Honestly, I don't think it's too tough to beat if you have the accolades going into it. So I think this fight could surpass it. I think the best air quote for the UFC. Well, I don't know. I would probably still say Shevchenko because even though the Chinese market is huge and they care about it enough to throw a PI there, at the same time, kind of a similar point Danny made, with Islam, I think applies to Wei Li. These are both loved fighters, and they still have their championships waiting in their natural division. So they have that back pocket card here, which is kind of the caveat of these matches, right? So, I'd say better for the UFC is the blonde who people like ogle over in the comments and put really creepy comments in Valentina Shevchenko's post. I think that's what they want.
Yeah.
All right. Danny, what's the significance of Brady versus Morales? That's the featured bout at UFC 322.
Yeah, this one's rough, but it's rough in an awesome way. Like the welterweight division is just so awesome. It's got so many title contenders, a lot going on. I talked to Raul Arbizu last week, that is Michael Morales' head coach, and he was telling me he thinks like with a good win, Morales could either get a title shot or at least get himself a title eliminator bout. I think more of the title eliminator bout. I do think like if he gets an awesome win here, he's probably 1 win from fighting for the belt. But man, you're fighting on the same night that JDM is fighting Makhachev. We know how the UFC sometimes just likes to capitalize on big moments. If Edwards versus Praches just happens to be a stinker, right? And in comparison, you got Brady and Morales going out there and putting on a crazy fight, or Morales gets a wild finish. Or Brady gets a wild finish. Like I wouldn't rule out the winner going on to fighting for the belt as well. So big fight. I'm not too worried about that. What I'm really what this bout sort of really captivates me in is not so much the stakes, but I want to see where Michael Morales is at, because like he's good, but we just don't know how good he is.
Are you saying that he might still need a title eliminator bout because Usman looks so good against Buckley and he's a former champ? And then of course we still talk about Rakhmonov, because I'm getting ready to say those ships are going to fail.
Right?
If hey, we'll welcome you back when you're back, but man, sometimes a hot hand is the hand to go with.
I agree. So I think that's definitely in play, but Usman not fighting, that is kind of interesting, right? Like the fact that they're kind of keeping him around for one more big one. I think that's what they're doing. And then Ian Gary as well, man. That guy's doing well. So
early lean, Danny, on this fight.
Oh man, this is so tough. I'm gonna go Michael Morales, I feel like, but it's just so hard to pick against Brady. But I'm gonna go with Michael.
You have an early lean, Dan?
Yeah, leaning toward Brady, more proven product, but win or lose, I'm with Danny. I want to see more from Morales is the main point.
Okay, and goes your early lean, please.
I think Dan and I are the Brady bunch, because it's very difficult, like Danny said, but I kind of have to lean with Brady on this one.
Which one of you is Jan and which one of you is Marsha? That's the key.
I ain't no Marsha, so I guess I'll be Jan.
Oh no.
All right. It goes. I'm going to stay with you. Edwards versus Prochas. Is this a must win for Edwards? Every champ wants to be champ again once they're not, and I imagine that's what Edwards wants, to get a taste of that life. You want it back, but Prochas is no joke, and Edwards, just a lot of his performances leave a lot to be desired.
I think it's absolutely a must win. Edwards, he doesn't really say much. He doesn't do very many interviews, so his career weighs a lot on performance in the cage, and right now that is not working out for him. So he needs to not only win, I think he has to have a very decisive victory.
Danny, Bo Nickel versus Rodolfo Vieira it was replaced by Dariush versus BSD, Benoit Saint-Denis. Are you okay with that? And also, where are we at on the Nickel hype train, the potential?
Yeah, that loss against RDR really kind of popped the balloon for him. Look, I still think I think there's still like something there, like obviously, but I think we gotta chill. And I actually commend the UFC for doing this, because Bo Nickel obviously has like a big name, bigger than Dariush and BSD, but man, you gotta put him in the prelims. You gotta give him time to grow. This guy doesn't have much experience, so you just gotta let him do his thing for a little bit.
Are you saying he was like a SpaceX rocket? Oh, that's unfortunate. It's in the
not yet, but we gotta chill out on like the hype. He still has a lot of work. So give him these type of fights.
That Vieira guy used to tire in his fights. He ain't tiring as much anymore. He's strong. It's going to be some trouble if it hits the ground, man. But then maybe Bo Nickel woke up and also got better. Who knows? That's what makes the fight intriguing. BSD looked great in his last fight. Dariush's fights never suck. Guys, give me another highlight before we get out of here on what you're looking forward to at UFC 322. Back to Danny Segura.
I'm gonna go with Tracy Cortez versus Aaron Blanchfield. That's a big, important fight for the division. I believe it's a rematch. They fought outside of the UFC. I feel like Tracy has evolved a ton, and she's just more than a pretty face, right? Because that's what a lot of people kind of know her for. But she's grown a lot, very skilled, and I want to see how far she can take this thing, because she has definitely star potential. So that's the highlight for me outside of the fights we talked.
Dan, Tom, another highlight from UFC 322.
Well, I'll hit you with another rematch that's happening, because the UFC loves rematches. Danny was right. Cortez versus Blanchfield was a rematch in Invicta. They'll dig for Invicta to get their rematches, especially there's no middleweights for really Mick to really get off on, he dug all the way back to the LFAs and the regional scenes to get Chepe Mariscal versus Pat Sabatini. And why I love both these rematches, including the one Danny mentioned, is because I always have trouble remembering who won, because if you go back and watch the tape, these are fights where Blanchfield had a real argument for beating Cortez, and even though Chepe, I love Chepe, he's been doing great, but telling everybody about Chepe, Patty Sabs is the man and arguably beat him last time. So now they're meeting. I think that's a great fight. And everybody's excited for Pratas versus Leon. I just want to say, I want to give the chat a nugget. I will just say Leon's got a winning record, I believe 3-1 against UFC level lefties, but in those victories, he's been rocked or dropped in all three of them. Leg kicks from RDA, more importantly, left hands against Brian Barberina and Nate Diaz. So, just something to chew on there for you guys.
Goes ahora tú.
I'm down for some cop on cop, RoboCop versus Kopylov. I think there's no way that goes.
That was nice.
RoboCop.
All right. Who do you think is going to win?
Oh, I'm going to go.
Don't cop no attitude. Give us an answer.
No, I'm going to go with RoboCop. He's a cop, you idiot.
All right.
He's a cop, you idiot.
I like I think I already gave some love to. I love Vieira and Nickel hitting the ground. High level wrestling against high level jiu-jitsu, but man, my man Malcolm Wellmaker is just got a lot of potential, kind of like Michael Morales. He's about 2 years behind, but I think he might get a quicker push because the English, el inglés, vato, he speaks it. Morales, not a lick, or at least I haven't heard of it. We'll see. It's going to be a great card, and MMA Junkie has got you covered all week with our coverage of UFC 322. We got feet on the ground. Cold Coffee, Ken Hathaway, and Mike Bond are in NYC. Dan Tom will have breakdowns of the fights later in the week. Danny Segura, one of the top reporters, he's doing the play-by-play on Fight Night. Pada Hanoun will do the preview show on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and myself and Goes will host a UFC 322 watch-along at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's truly a team effort here on Junkie. Lots of other names behind the scenes that are busting their ass. All we ask is download the app, hit the refresh on your laptop. Every 30 minutes, there's always a news story. And like the videos. When you see them, subscribe to the channel. It's all free. We take care of the rest. Enjoy fight week. Enjoy the fights. We'll see you on Saturday. Go out and be a champion.